Welcome back, my dear students. Today this is the second session for the active and the passive voice. In the previous session, we have studied what is the difference between active and the passive voice, the form of each sentence, and we said that the active we have a subject and followed by a verb and an object, and the subject is the doer of the action and the object is the recipient. While in the passive voice it is the opposing form. The passive voice also have a subject and a verb and an object, but the difference that the subject is the one who is receiving the action, the recipient, and the object is the doer of the action. Exactly like when you say the girl poured the tea. The girl poured the tea. The girl is the subject and the doer of the action, which is pouring, and the tea is the object or the recipient of the action. If we turned into the passive, it will be the tea was poured by the girl. The tea was poured by the girl. The tea here became the subject, but it is the recipient. Was poured, it is the verb, and the form of the verb changed into a verb, verb to be followed by the past participle. And the girl became the object, but it is the doer of the action. Last session I told you that in the next time we're going to speak about the when to use both of them. The active and the passive voice, both of them are expressing the same ideas but in different ways. Generally, you should always aim to use the active voice whenever you write. You should always use the active voice whenever you write. Why? Because the active voice is clearer and more direct, while the passive is sometimes it could be confusing. Maybe it would be preferred to write in the passive voice if you are writing a non-fiction, writing a fiction story, for example, because in this kind of story, using the passive create a kind of suspense and attract the reader's attention, because all the time you are focusing on the action more than the doer of the action, so the reader is waiting to discover who is the doer. But generally you should stick to writing in the active voice all the time. Some scenarios in which you might want or need to use the passive voice. You will use the passive voice when you want to emphasize the recipient of the action. If the recipient of the action is more important for you than the doer, so here you start to by the recipient, turning it into the subject. This means that you are using a passive voice. Or when you want to emphasize the action itself. Also when you don't know who or what is performing the action. So the most important items is when your concern is the recipient, and is when you don't know who performed the action. So this time it is preferred to use the passive voice. When the doer of the action is irrelevant or unimportant, the same thing. Most people believe that, look at this example. Most people believe that the Declaration of Independence was signed only signed on July 4th, but this is not actually the case. Look at this example. If you're writing an essay about the Declaration of Independence and you come up with this sentence, most people believe that the Declaration of Independence was signed on July 4th, but this is not actually the case. If we try to parse or separate the sentence into grammatical parts, if we separate it into grammatical parts, so this come out with what? You'll find that part of the sentence is clearly in the active voice, which is most people believe. This is in the active voice. Most people believe. Most people here visit the subject and the doer and believe it's the verb itself. And this is in the active voice. And the crux or the most important of it is actually in the passive voice, which is the declaration of the independence was signed. The declaration of the independence was signed. So here we find that the declaration of independence, this is the subject here, but it is the recipient of which action of signing. And was signed here is the verb. It is G-form because it's the passive, so it had verb to be in the past followed by the verb, the past participle. So, doing this, it keep the emphasis on the document, which is the topic of your essay. What's important that many people who signed the Declaration of Independence, listing them is so difficult. How can you list all the people who signed this declaration? So this is better to write it in the passive voice. It will be better because it will be hard for you to mention the names of the people. And moreover, that your concern is what is the recipient itself, the Declaration of Independence. There are many times you might want to change a sentence from passive to active, or even from active to passive. Changing this, to do this, you will need to understand exactly how the two types of the voices work, how the active voice work and how the passive voice work. So first and primarily, you have to know two things. That whereas in the active voice, the subject is the doer and the object is the recipient of the action. While in the passive voice, the subject is the recipient of the action and the object is the doer. This is the two things that you have to understand, that the difference between the active and the passive voice lies in these two main rules. Of the rules of the subject and the object in each one of them. Here's an example of a sentence in the active voice and in the passive voice. The sentence in the active voice is she created a travel blog. She here is the subject and the doer of the action. Created, this is the verb in the past. A travel blog, this is the object and the recipient at the same time. A sentence in the active, and in what tense it's into the past. If you are shifting it into or turning it into the passive voice, you should keep the tense. It means that you should keep the past. And the change will happen in steps. Look at the passive. What happened? I start by the travel blog because this is my concern, the recipient, and I turned into the subject. Was created. This is the verb, but the form of the verb had to change it. Yes, it is still in the past, but it's changed into verb to be in the past, followed by the past participle of create. Create, created, created. By, as we used to, and her. It means that yes, I turned she into an object pronoun, her, created by her. It is object, yes, an object pronoun, but it is the doer of the action, which is creating. Here, this is another way of looking at the difference between the active and passive voice. The active voice, this is the sentence, and I separated. She created a travel blog. She is the subject, created is the verb, a travel blog is the object. She here is the doer, and the travel blog is the recipient. In the passive voice, a travel blog was created by her. The travel blog here, this is the subject, but it's the recipient of what action? Creating by her. Her here is the object. It's an object pronoun, but it's the doer of the action. There's the same table again. As you can see here in the active voice, Okay, she is the door, as I told you again, is the door of the action, whereas the travel plot, this is the object and the recipient of the verb itself. But in the passive voice, the designation is swapped or switched or it's changed. We started by the travel plot. Yes, the original. We'll find that the original subject she becomes here the object, and it turned into object pronoun which is he. But it is still the door of the action. Whereas the travel block was the object in the original one, it turned to be a subject in the passive voice, but this is still the recipient of the action. But note that the verb which began in the simple, in the original one was in the simple past tense, it has been converted into the verb to be in the past followed by the past participle of create. To sum up the conversion, we will start by converting from active to passive voice. We have to do the same. These steps. Number one, we switch the position of the subject and the object. So the original object is now the subject, and the original subject is now the object, as we did. Number two, we add word by before the new object, which is the door. The new object, which is the door, and convert the verb into verb to be, whether it is in the present or the past, followed by the past participle form based on the original tense used. This is converting from the active to the passive. These steps to converting from the passive to active voice. The process will for this essentially the same, but we are going to go backward. First, we will switch the position of the subject and the object, so the original subject is now the object and the original object is now the subject. And we will delete by, we don't need by anymore. Fine, and we will convert verb to be followed by the past participle form into the appropriate tense according to the tense of the sentence, and we will indicate only whether the first or the second form of the verb according to the tense, as I told you. Okay, what is tricky here? The verb is the trickiest part of converting from the passive to active. So you want to make sure you are keeping the same tense as indicated by the original verb and sentence. This is an example to show you how to change various tenses of the word to from passive to active. Is done. This is passive in the present. Is done. So you will turn S. We will delete or cancel the verb to be and keep the first or the second form of the verb do or does, and because it's the present, so we'll keep it in the present, so the first form only. Is or are being done, this is in the present continuous. Is or are being done in the present continuous passive, so we will delete being because this is the sign of the passive, and keep verb to be followed by the verb doing. Was were done, it will be did. Was were being done, was or were doing. Will be done, will be will do. By practicing a lot, you will figure out the difference between both of them. Finally, and the last thing, you have to know that you cannot convert from active to passive or from passive to active without having an object in the sentence. Like this example, I drank. I is the subject and drank, this is the verb in the past. This is an active one, it doesn't have an object because drank here, it's a intransitive verb. It doesn't need an object to finish the meaning of the sentence. So If I want to change it into passive, would it look like this? Was drunk by me? Of course not. So without an object, we cannot explain who will complete the project, because in the passive voice you need to use the object as a subject in the sentence, and although the subject is the recipient this time, and because here we don't have the object, so we can't complete the project. So you cannot convert from active to passive if you don't have an object. So now, yes, it's the quiz time. Okay, of course, but I will not take it right now. It will be online on spot when you come with me in the live session. Thank you for listening so much. Stay safe. I missed you a lot. Until we meet again, bye.